My name is Rachel Hagemeyer, President and CEO of the Canton Symphony Orchestra. Welcome to our podcast, Orchestrating Change. I am so happy to have with me today Tito Muñoz on the podcast. He is guest conducting with us here at the Canton Symphony Orchestra and has conducted many places in the world. You were a music director in France for a little bit. You were with the Phoenix Symphony. You were with the Cleveland Orchestra for a bit. You've been all over the place. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about who you are with the audience and just how you got into this wild world of conducting.
Sure, yeah. Well, first, I'm very happy to be here. It's, I've had a Cleveland connection for Northeast Ohio connection actually just for a while, and being with the Cleveland Orchestra about almost 20 years ago now, maybe 15, 20 years, something like that. I was assistant conductor with them. So actually our soloist, Mark Kosower, actually was hired during my time. And
really?
So I've known him since he started with the orchestra.
How fun.
And in fact, we've done the Rococo Variations together with the Cleveland Orchestra. So
perfect.
One of the pieces on the program. So it's a wonderful connection. I'm back in town in the area because I'm working with the Cleveland Institute of Music now as an interim director of the orchestras there. And so this just makes a lot of sense to be here and working in Canton, and I have some of my students that are playing in the orchestra now, who are, I had to allow to not be at one of the rehearsals because they're doing a concert at CIM this week. Also,
it's a crazy schedule for them.
It is, but they're great. They're wonderful people, wonderful musicians, and so it's great. I'm happy to be here. So where I started, I'm from New York City. Born and raised there. I still live there, and I have, I guess, a very not very unique beginnings as a musician. I actually started in a school program in middle school, and I was very lucky, I think, that I found violin just happenstance because I really took to it very, very quickly. It was in 5th or 6th grade, basically middle school, and I was also very lucky in that I, growing up in New York City, which it's obviously a big cultural mecca in a lot of ways. But you also don't even realize, if you're from there and living there, how immersed you can be in culture and music and all of that. So anyway, I got started in violin in middle school, and then almost immediately my teacher there recommended me to a program at the Juilliard School called the Music Advancement Program, which still exists to this day, and it's thriving. It's a wonderful program. Yeah, it's MAP is is what we call it, and it's part of the pre-college division. So there's the pre-college program, and then there's the MAP division. And it started out as an affirmative action program. That's what it was initially for. The president of Juilliard at the time, Joseph Polisi, started it as a way to help diversify classical music. I think around that time there were a lot of sort of beginning pilot programs of things like this because this was we were experimenting with these kinds of ideas, and so it was a really wonderful program that you didn't have to have an enormous amount of experience. They wanted at least 6 months in a music program that you can basically read music and all of that, and the faculty were all world-class New York City musicians that were playing on Broadway, playing in the New York Phil, playing in the wonderful things. So I got in, and having only maybe a year on the violin at that point, and it was really wonderful just to be immersed in that environment, because Juilliard is it can be very intimidating, a intimidating place, and as MAP students, we were not at that point still not the pre-college. We certainly weren't the college, so we kind of had our own little nook, our own little space, and there were certain spaces that they reserved for us in the program. But still, we would go there every Saturday, and Joshua Bell's there, and Itzhak Perlman's there, and Wynton Marsalis is there. I mean, we were immersed in this kind of environment, which was really, really special, to the point where we were getting it. Just you become accustomed to it. It's really wonderful. And then our teachers being playing in a lot of the big cultural institutions on Broadway and all of that. So we get a chance to even go to see our own teachers playing in these wonderful ensembles. So that was a really formative time. I mean, those 2 years that I was in that program, I eventually afterwards went to the Manhattan School of Music pre-college program, the actual pre-college in that school. And music was, I knew through those experiences was going to be a big part of my life. I didn't know if it was going to be my profession, but I knew it was going to be a big part of my life. I ended up going to a high school that was a performing arts high school. LaGuardia High School is what it's called. And it was the subject of the musical fame and the movie fame and all of that. That was the high school that I went to. And also in Lincoln Center. So that was kind of my campus growing up. So, that was kind of what formed my love for music. I think the fact that I was also, you don't even realize you do the Saturday program, whether it's Juilliard or Manhattan School of Music, you do your, in my case, the LaGuardia High School, the orchestra there, which was a very high level youth orchestra, even though it was a public school, it was still a specialized auditioned school. Yeah. And then all the youth orchestras that you can join on top of that. So there was there was the New York Youth Symphony, there was the Interschool Orchestras, New York. So at one point I was in 4 or 5 different youth orchestras at the same time. And this for a kid growing up in New York who's really serious about music, this is pretty normal. And so by the time you finish high school, you've played a lot of the standard rep, actually, like in real situations in Lincoln Center, in some of those theaters, in Carnegie Hall, because that's our space to play. Yeah. And it's a little bit of a culture shock when you leave. And my first time leaving was when I got my first job in Cincinnati with the Cincinnati Symphony, and I was assistant conductor of the Cincinnati Symphony, and I also was one of the conductors of the youth orchestra for the Cincinnati Symphony Youth Orchestra. And that was a huge shock for me because I knew that New York is unique in that way, but to actually be part of it now in another place and realize that my youth orchestra was the thing. It's the thing. That's it. And everybody's driving to youth orchestra, which we don't drive in New York City. Right. Like you're not allowed to until you're
sometimes a long way you're driving.
Correct. And so that was a kind of a big shock to me to just to see like how impactful some of these programs can be. There's a certain just life experience and cultural experience that you get from being immersed in this kind of environment that is just really special, and you can't really get any other way than just really being in that kind of environment.
That is, so I grew up in Oklahoma. So there is the Oklahoma Youth Orchestras, and I think Tulsa now has a youth symphony.
Right.
But I think that's about it.
And everybody drives to it.
One of our horn players drove 2 hours from Tishomingo to come and be in youth symphony. Wow. And it is, growing up, in Oklahoma, I was so used to driving so long distances to get places and meeting people who didn't get their driver's license until they were in their 20s. Yep. I'm like, well, how did you get places? Public transportation is a thing. Other places, Rachel, I always forget that.
Yes, that was for me. I mean, going to high school, I lived, it was a 20-minute bus ride and then an hour on the train to get to school every day.
Oh my gosh. To and from. That's still a big commute. It's a commute. That is a big commute. Yeah. So what then took you to from the violin into conducting? Was there a moment that conducting became something for you?
Yeah, there were moments, I suppose. Sure. I think there are a couple things. One, I definitely, when I was in all of these youth orchestras that I was playing in, I was definitely fascinated by the conductor. I was fascinated by, I remember the very first full, that wasn't a middle school arrangement, like one of these like Sandy Dacca arrangements.
Yeah, it's the real piece instead of the arrangement. Right. Yeah.
There were two. It was one in one of my youth orchestras. It was the Firebird 1919.
A good one for youth symphony.
Yeah, and in at LaGuardia High School, it was the Enigma Variations, Elgar.
I did both. Those were two of the first I ever played, not arranged.
And those of us who are in youth orchestra, who have done youth orchestra, know that those pieces that we do in youth orchestra, those are the ones that we know cold, that we know forever, where you just remember everything about it and all the voices and everything, because you spend months with a piece, right?
Yes.
And I remember that first time, especially at LaGuardia, because we had rehearsals every day. It was a period in school that I was always fascinated by the conductor at what they heard that I didn't hear, like all the things that they were rehearsing and doing that were over my head until that point. Until now, I'm like in a situation where I'm able to watch and see how this is done. Yeah. And that kind of, I think, just made me, I don't know, that fascination made me consider a lot of things that I just hadn't considered before, like bowings and phrasings and all these things that as a kid sitting in the back of the second violins, you don't really have much of a say in, like or else your back.
Someone else is handling that.
Well, or otherwise you're a backseat conductor, which is just doesn't work very well. And so that definitely was motivation for me to get better, so I could get first chair, get principal spots. That was very, very helpful, I think, and a motivator, because I started because that fascination, kind of made me want to develop these. So there was that. There was also the fact that, as a MAP student at Juilliard, I think my class in MAP was the first class, because I think it started maybe 2 or 3 years before I joined.
Yeah.
My class was the first one that got actual real Juilliard ID cards that gave us access to the library, the Juilliard library. And so we had, before I think they just had laminated whatever, is that, that was the first time. So we actually had barcodes. We can go into the library and actually check things out. And of course, this is before our smartphones, before our YouTube, before anything like that. We actually had to go to the library and check out CDs and records and tapes and the books. And so I remember that was, for me, also just, I loved going there and having access to all of this music and being able to just like grab a score. I would just see, I remember the first time I saw George Crumb Black Angels. It's a string quartet. It's an oversized score, and it's massive. I remember seeing it. It's this like, enormous, like, poster board sized score for the string quartet. And I remember opening it up just because I was just fascinated by how big it was.
What's happening here?
What is this? And so I got a recording out. It was the Brodsky Quartet recording. I remember this. I remember going into the listening lab and getting the CD, putting it in, and just sitting there and that's what I did every Saturday after I was done with my classes. I would just go in the library and just spend hours just listening, and so that was really, really fascinating for me doing that. So that was one other instance, and then another instance was I had. When I was more into my church activities, I used to play violin in my church, and we had a little group of us, similar ages, but I had two friends. They were brother and sister, flutist and a pianist, and we were like the little band with another guitarist and a choir. And so I used to go to their house to rehearse. And he, the brother, he was older, went to a specialized high school that, and he was about 4 years older than me. Anyway, that school that he went to. They had a really cool thing that I realize now is very cool, is that the senior class, they would do a school musical every year, like a lot of schools, but the faculty would appoint the leadership roles of the musical to the top seniors. So the best senior musician would be the music director. The best senior actor would be the director, and the faculty would guide them and help them do it.
That's fabulous.
Which is really cool.
That's very cool.
Very, very, so my friend, the pianist, he was the conductor, music director of the school musical that year, and it was West Side Story.
Very cool.
And
hard music.
Very hard music. Yeah, I know. So I would go to rehearse for the church stuff. And then my friend would be showing me the score that he got. It was back then when they had the handwritten musical theater scores, and he had a baton, and he was learning how to conduct and all the mixed meter and all the stuff. And it's the
how cool.
And so he was showing me all this stuff. That was really cool. I was very fascinated by that. I ended up going to the show and seeing him do his thing. And he kept talking about it. This is a very cool thing. He kept talking about the guy who was the director, the next senior actor, and that he was this really talented guy working on his own stuff, whatever. It was Lin-Manuel Miranda.
No.
Yeah, and he was working on In the Heights at the time. That was and so that's why In the Heights is so much like West Side Story.
Yeah.
Because,
oh my gosh.
Because he was directing West Side Story at his high school.
How fabulous is that? Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So that was really cool. So
goodness.
That definitely was a moment seeing my friend do it. And I was like, this is really cool. Maybe, and sure enough, the following year, which was my sophomore year in high school at LaGuardia High School, we did West Side Story.
There we go.
And I was concertmaster of the orchestra, and the conductor let me do one of the shows, and it was fabulous.
That is. West Side Story. Wow, that's really West Side Story has impacted a lot of things. It's interesting you bring up West Side Story, which is based on Romeo and Juliet, which we're playing Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet.
Yep.
Tchaikovsky's Romeo and Juliet is one of those pieces for me that I know.
Yes.
backwards and forwards because I played it. We played an arrangement of it in my high school marching band because we were a competition marching band. Oklahoma marching bands are very different than a lot of other parts of the country. And I just have that piece. I probably have it memorized. I could do it. It's one of the youth symphony stuff.
Yeah.
It sticks with you
Totally.
so deeply.
100%.
Is there a piece that sticks with, is there like one piece that you like would never get tired of listening to? That is the piece that sticks with you in that kind of way.
That's so interesting. Gosh, now that it's a very interesting question. Now that I'm a conductor,
It's shifted for you?
well, no, that's shifted, but like the way I listen has shifted.
That's,
because I'm so used to like kind of, I think it's the same as a player too, but I'm so used to forming a real interpretation of something, and so it's not even the piece. It would have to be like the recording or like the you know what I mean, the interpretation. If it's not my own,
that's
then it's so yeah. I mean, I for example, I know one of the CDs that was on replay all the time because I just loved it so much was this recording of the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto because I was working on it as a young violinist, and I remember listening to this one. It was Maxim Vengerov with the Berlin Phil. This was maybe 25 years ago, 30 years ago when he recorded it. And to this day, it's still I can't.
The recording.
I can't. Every time that I hear other people, they're amazing. And then I go back to it, I'm like, oh, this is the one. This is the one. This is the one that I remember that I grew up with. I mean, I don't know if I listen to it now fresh, if I would have thought the same. I have no idea.
Right.
But it just stays with you like your favorite, any kind of CD, any recording of any pop artist, same thing. And so that's definitely one of them. I think there were definitely a few others that I did in youth orchestra, like Firebird 1919.
That one is,
like Enigma Variations, like Billy the Kid, Aaron Copland. We did that in youth orchestra, and that's also one of those pieces that I love just because it's nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would love it if I didn't know it and I just and I learned it as an adult, because it's definitely not his best piece.
Sure.
But it's one of my youth orchestra, and in fact I just did it with the New Jersey Symphony a couple of weeks ago, and one of the trumpet players from that youth orchestra that we played and came to the concert, and we both were kind of a little teary-eyed because we remember like having those experiences together, like playing that piece, and it was so much fun. And yeah, anyway.
That is so special.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some pieces that every time I listen to them, I cry. I don't mean to.
Yeah.
Or it can even just be like one note in the way it happens, or one line.
Sure.
The descending horn line in Nutcracker, dee-da-da-dee-da-da-da. And then when that, it's just a scale. I don't know, but there's something, growing up, going to the ballet every year. That was the thing. There's always that one thing that gets you. And that's what's so, God, that's why I love what we get to do. And it's very fun. I love having people on the podcast and getting to know them and hearing about all the wonderful things that everyone is doing, but everyone's stories and the really cool moments that have happened in people's life that led them to get where they are now is fascinating, because one thing different and we would be living completely different lives.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It is absolutely crazy. Well, there's a couple of other things I want to talk about, but
sure.
I also like to do just like rapid fire questions with people.
Sure.
Just completely off topic, just to give our audience, I think sometimes our audience forgets that the people on the podium, the people playing, they're just people too. So if you wouldn't mind indulging me, favorite meal of the day?
Breakfast.
Nice.
Yeah, I need breakfast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place in the world?
Favorite place in the world? Home.
Oh.
Home is yes.
And that's in New York?
That's in New York City. Yeah, but like my actual house, like home is definitely my favorite place in the world. Yes.
That's great. If you weren't a conductor, what do you think you'd be doing?
That's easy. I would, because I in high school if I didn't end up doing music, I probably would have been a computer programmer or a network engineer or something, because I was very into computers. I'm still into computers, but I did that, and I did some even education in that during high school, and so I probably would have gone into that if the music thing wasn't like a thing.
Great. Would have made us so much fun. Okay, final. Favorite non-orchestral musician or band?
Gosh. Oh wow,
Many.
Yeah, I mean, I love Ella Fitzgerald.
Oh,
I think she's like just the colors and the way she inflects. I'm always just astounded every time I hear a recording of hers, just how good and how easy and how the choices that she makes are so musical and so wonderful, and I love it. Yeah.
Fabulous. That's great. Okay. Well, you've done so many cool things. And I was trying to think about what I'd like to focus on. And I came across a project that you did, Hello America Transatlantic, that you did with the American Composers Orchestra. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that project. I love the American Composers Orchestra and all the awesome stuff they do there.
They're doing a lot of great things.
Fabulous. Yeah. And the team there is great, good people. Lots of cool stuff. But if you wouldn't mind just sharing about that project and kind of how you got involved in what that project was.
Well, another aside, another New York Youth Orchestra connection. So when I did West Side Story at LaGuardia in high school, the conductor for that production was the man who was the jazz director. He was the jazz band director. He was assigned to conduct the musical. His name is Bob Stewart. He's a jazz tuba player, and he
tuba player.
Yes, jazz tuba player. A very, very renowned jazz tuba player, and he also happens to be the father of Curtis Stewart. Who is the artistic director of the American Composers Orchestra.
Okay, and how fun! What a fun connection.
Yes, and so I didn't. Curtis at the time when I was in high school, Curtis was like, I don't know, he was a toddler probably.
Okay.
So I didn't know him. I had probably seen him because I think Mr. Stewart, Bob Stewart, and his wife brought their son to things, and I didn't reconnect with Curtis until much later once he had already established himself. But so we have that funny connection. And so I remember the first time that I saw one of Curtis's recitals, and Mr. Stewart was there, and we reconnected. It's great. So that project. The American Composers Orchestra in general right now is doing some really interesting things. Their footprint at Carnegie Hall is not as extensive as it used to be historically, but they're really making the most out of the footprint that they have now. And so every concert that they do now has a really strong thematic kind of idea behind it. And this idea that Curtis, I think was thinking about was just how the migration between the Americas and Europe and how that affected what ended up being the kind of Latin American sound in Europe. Cool. And so we had several pieces that were all completely, every single piece on the program was a completely different sound world, completely different idea of what the orchestra was. There was one that was very cinematic and romantic. We had Clarissa Saad, who did
we're doing a piece of hers in January.
She's amazing. Exciting. And she did this where she plays like an AI.
It's very cool.
Yeah, and she wears a bodysuit and the whole thing, and it's really fascinating. And very there was one point where I walk away and she kind of conducts the orchestra as the computer, and it's very, very interesting. We played Edmar Castañeda, who's a Venezuelan Latin harp player, Latin jazz harp player. He wrote a concerto for himself, and so that another kind of stylistic different. But each one of these people and the music that they wrote had all of these incredible influences that came from this circular migration between the Americas and Europe and Africa. And so you see it even in Mexican we call banda music, but it sounds a little like polka because that's exactly what the influence was. It actually was European polka that came to Mexico, and then that turned into the actual Mexican kind of banda music that we are very accustomed to hearing, but we don't realize that it has European roots to it. And so that was the point of the project, was to kind of bring all these people together. And for me, it was just fascinating because it was such a very American concert, because it literally is kind of what we are as in America. We are this weird melting pot of, especially New York, but in general, like, all of our influences. You look in Latin America, especially because there have been so many folks who've come from different parts of the world who have sought refuge in Latin America. Asian cultures, as an example. So in several countries in Latin America, Peru, Ecuador, which is where my family is from, we have a dish called chaulafan or chaufa, which is actually fried rice.
Oh.
It's actually Asian fried rice. But it is Ecuadorian or Peruvian, and it tastes like Ecuadorian or Peruvian, but it is fried rice that is actually Chinese fried rice. That's what it is. And it's delicious. It doesn't taste like like normal fried rice, and it's not used with soy sauce or anything like that, but that's the influence, and that's where it came from. And there's a lot of that. And you see certain things that sort of came from its European influence, or sometimes African influence, because there was native and there was the African slave trade as well. So so that was the point of the program. I think it was very powerful. The audience really responded to it because all of the music was wonderful and really great and just varied, and just so much variety in the music as well.
That just made me think of something I hadn't thought of before. Was I think in America we use the phrase "we're a melting pot" so often and forget that the rest of the world is also a melting pot. Mm-hmm. So many places in the world, everyone is influenced by each other. And maybe it's maybe America to a certain degree has a different kind of way of thinking about us as a melting pot, but every country has that. And because of that, I've noticed in orchestral music and how we choose to program concerts that we can start putting all of stuff into a box of this is the Latin American orchestral sound. Yep. And I wonder how you think about programming other types of music, especially maybe Latin American music, on concerts in a way that maybe challenges that and doesn't let the audience go, well, it's a Mexican piece, so it's a Latin. It's all this is what must be what all Mexican music sounds like.
Well, I think in the vein, maybe not to the extent that this, for example, this Hello America concert does, but I think just putting the pieces there, putting them together. Sometimes it's a matter of what the composer's influence was. Mm-hmm. I mean, for example, you could put together a program of all just straight up Mexican music, and you'll have 4 or 5 completely different sounds and completely different pieces. I mean, you could have Revueltas, who is a modernist, really interesting and very complex composer. Then you could have Moncayo with his Huapango, which is a very nationalistic, wonderful, tuneful kind of piece. And we did that actually. CIM at Cleveland Studio Music, the first concert this semester was Carlos Miguel Prieto conducted it, and he programmed exactly that. He programmed a concert that was mostly all Mexican music, but all completely different. Everything was completely different, and it just shows how much variety. It shows the amount of influence that exists. It shows, I mean, as an example, they did a piece that I do a lot also, Senza Maya by Revueltas, which is a very short piece, a 9-minute piece, but very complicated, very rhythmically complicated. And in a lot of ways, you could actually say that Langston Hughes was the influence of this piece, because it was the piece by Revueltas was based on a poem by Nicolas Guillen, who was a Cuban poet. Okay, but he was influenced. He was friends with Guillen was friends with Langston Hughes, and he was really inspired and influenced by the Harlem school of poetry, which was influenced by the politics of the time, and it was influenced by kind of using the vernacular and using the rhythm of the words as a sort of a musical vehicle. And so Guillen then adopted this idea and used it in this particular poem, Senza Maya, which is kind of like a chant to kill a snake, but it had political undertones. And then Revueltas took this poem that he was fascinated with, and he was friends with Guillen, and actually just transliterated literally the spoken sentences into the rhythm of the piece. And so the piece is literally almost as if it's a recitation of the poem from beginning to end. Cool. And you could literally have a line drawn and you end up with Langston Hughes for this Mexican piece.
I love that.
It's amazing, and it's one of the most important masterpieces from Mexico.
Oh my gosh.
So for me it's being able to have moments of that, because in the end, I think one of the things about orchestral concerts, classical music concerts, but in particular orchestral concerts, is that even just the idea of symphony is kind of its own idea, its own stereotype, if you will. Some people say, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to the symphony," and there's a kind of connotation with that. And it could be, I don't know, it could be a wonderful, uplifting Mozart symphony, or it could be Shostakovich's Baba Yar, which is, about the Baba Yar poem that Yevtushenko wrote about the Ukrainian massacre. Yeah. And it's in a way, it's a little bit unfair because, as a museum goer, if you were to go to a museum, you know the exhibit you're going to, and you know what you're about to get yourself into, whether it's like a fashion exhibit or whether it's relics from the Third Reich. Right. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. Yeah. But I feel like a lot of people come to the orchestra and they don't necessarily know if they're going to get a wonderful Mozart Pleasant Symphony or if they're going to get something about a massacre or something about Stalin or something about that's really, really dark and deep, and everyone kind of just, and I actually feel like we as an industry don't do a good job also of telling that story in a way that people can like look at a concert not just as a concert at the symphony, but it's actually an exhibit that I want to go to specifically. I was at a lunch with Paul Jarrett. He's the executive director for the Akron Symphony. We were having lunch, and we were talking about this of how do we do a better job of letting people know what they're getting into, because the days of, even for the big pieces, the days of someone getting a postcard that says Mahler 1 and them knowing what Mahler 1 means. Right. Is people don't know what that means. Right. So how can we do a good job? And so I wonder how you think about, you are doing a lot of work in education, obviously with CIM, but how do you think about that education? Because it's easy to do once they're in the seat or once they're in the concert hall and we can have the pre-concert talks and we can do all that. How do you think about educating and us as a field being able to deliver that message? And ultimately I think it's a lot of teamwork, and it actually does take it's a heavy lift on marketing. It's a heavy lift because it requires an extremely kind of intentional campaign for whatever it is that you want to prioritize. If it's a theme of a concert, if it's a specific piece, it depends on how you want to go about it. But I think there definitely needs to be a lot more kind of care and consideration other than just like writing a copy that will fit the box in the brochure and leaving it at that. I think there does need to be, and now that we have the tools, we have the social media tools, we have all of these things, I think, finding new, younger talent that is really good with creating these kinds of materials and also just thinking outside of what we know in our bubble. I found the best, like in Phoenix, for example, and she's still there, wonderful. She started as kind of the social media director. She's not a musician. And she actually was one of the smartest, most creative in the way she thought about what she was trying to deliver with the orchestra, and it made us as an organization have to be like, oh right, like we need to like not be in our heads, like let her do it. Like she knows what she's doing. Like it might feel like we're like reiterating things or saying no, like she knows what people need to hear about this music, what gets them excited, and it's not the same things that get us excited. It has to, you have to really think about it that way. So I think there's a lot. I think there's just it's multifaceted. It really requires everybody to kind of come to the table with new and interesting ideas and be willing to just take a couple of risks and just put something out there that is just cool and interesting and fun and engaging and telling the truth about the piece. Right. Gosh, the way that you just talked about all those composers from Mexico was just it was so exciting for me to listen to, and the way that you talked about all that. And, before I feel like we've been talking for 2 seconds, but we've been actually talking for so long, it feels like. But before we wrap up, I wonder if you had any recommendations for the audience about something you think is worth listening to, or a book that's worth reading, or a piece of music that is worth their time. Is there a recommendation you would have? I know that's a huge thing. Oh my gosh. You can spout off 5 if you want, but wow, that's a really interesting. Oh my God, I wish I was prepared. I don't know. There is a lot. Yeah. There's just, I feel like there's so much available. Right. I think I have no idea. As an example, there are some wonderful there's some wonderful streaming services that offer, like Medici, for example, Medici.tv and Berlin Phil Digital Concert Hall. I feel like there are some organizations that have had the resources for a long time, that have been doing this for a while, that have been able to create some really wonderful materials. And aside from just concerts, I mean, there are of course wonderful concerts that you can watch, but I think just listening to interviews and But I also think that for me, actually, I do have something. So I think in general, if you're going to a concert, I think not only reading up on the piece, but reading up on the composer. I feel like just like doing a little bit of research on the composer can really just, I don't know, really enlighten the experience of listening to a piece, just about the person, who the person was. Yeah. I mean, yes, you'll get some stuff in your program notes. You will get some stuff from the orchestra will always. But I think if you went out there and, because you can literally just do it on your phone and just and find out. As an example, Florence Price has been in the lexicon now for a few years, but as her music was rediscovered. But still, so many of the audiences that come and listen to those concertos and those pieces, they still don't know.
They don't know anything.
They don't, and it's all been written about. There's been articles and everything's been written about, but the fact that like we found a box in 2009 that had all these wonderful pieces
in an attic,
and just even knowing that, I remember I tell that story every time from the podium whenever I do a piece of hers, and everybody's shocked, and I'm like, I get it, I know why, I understand that, but I mean this coming to an orchestra concert, I feel like there is. On the one hand, there is an entertainment element to it. Of course, you're coming to the concert to be entertained and to have an experience. But at the same time, it also is a culturally enriching experience as well. It's art. It's not just a Vegas act. It's really art. I mean, if it's not pops, and so having that extra just extra little effort to go and just find out something about what you're about to listen to. It
can change the whole thing.
It can change everything about how you're receiving the information that you're getting from the stage.
Yeah. I mean, it's great advice because it just changed so much. It really does. And understanding what that person was maybe going through when that piece was 100%. Written, it changes everything.
I mean, as an example, with this Mexican piece, the Senza Maya piece, for example, on YouTube, there is a video recording, audio recording of the poet Guillen reciting the poem.
Well, that's
which we can't do in program notes.
Sure,
and we're likely not going to play it at the concert. We're just going to play the piece,
Right,
and
but that's so important.
Of course, if you just learned a little about the piece and then heard that, and you'd be like, oh, I want to hear what this sounds like. From an orchestra, like playing these things. It makes a difference.
Yeah. All right. Well, the last thing I always ask everyone, because the podcast is called Orchestrating Change, and we're always trying to be better as an organization, as a field, and just bring more people in. And so I ask everybody, how do we orchestrate change? And I know it's very open-ended, but how would you orchestrate change?
I mean, actually, it's very simple. I think we just have to be better at inviting everybody. Everything that we do does not. I mean, our audience reflects what we're doing as an organization, as an industry. So if our audience is mono whatever, then that's because that's the job that we're doing. We're doing something wrong. And so I think that in general, one of the things that I think so. In my orchestra in Phoenix, we had a principal clarinet who I think he's no longer principal anymore. He's now doing a lot of other things. He's the executive director of Gateways Festival in Rochester. Alex Lang, and he was a wonderful thinker and everything. And one thing that he's has many nuggets, but one nugget that I really loved was making the concert hall or whatever the space is that we use as an orchestra, as an organization, it needs to be like a public space, like a park. It needs to be a space where everybody in the community feels like they can walk in, and they're going to not just feel welcome, but they're going to see their people there.
Yeah.
And if they don't see their people there, then they're not going to feel welcome.
Right.
And that is not just like the actual physical people. It's everything about the values of the organization. So ultimately, it all boils down to how are you inviting your community into what you're doing, and that's where the whatever. Anything that you're doing as an organization, that's the question that needs to first be how are we implementing this idea in what we're about to do. So that's
I wish we could sit and talk forever. There's a million things we could sit and talk about, but thank you so much for just having this moment with me and
Thanks
talking about all these wonderful things. And so excited to have you conduct and hopefully hear you talk more about music, because I like listening to you talk about music. It's very, very fun.
This has been a great
Tito,
pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Orchestrating Change is a production of the Canton Symphony Orchestra. Our theme music was composed by Eric Gould and performed by Derek Snyder and Tim Adams. Our video and audio editor is Sarah Daler. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.